Welcome to In the Lab, a podcast from Luminate, the leading provider of data and insights for the entertainment industry. I'm Andrew Wallenstein, Chief Media Analyst at Luminate Intelligence. On this episode, we are talking with Clint Stinchcomb, President and CEO of CuriosityStream, a streaming service specializing in nonfiction content. Ordinarily, racking up 20 million subscribers plus worldwide for a niche service would be enough to tip a hat to CuriosityStream. But here's what's even more distinctive about its business. There's a pioneering effort afoot to aggressively license its library as AI training data. We will walk through all of that and more with Clint. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Really appreciate being here.
So first, let's just get the basics off the bat. For those who may not have heard of CuriosityStream, though it's been in the market now a good decade, give us the elevator pitch. Where are you based? How much content do you have? How many countries are you in?
Sure, we're based in the media capital of Silver Spring, Maryland. That's the Mid-Atlantic media capital, Andrew,
Okay.
in case you were wondering. CuriosityStream was started in 2015 by John Hendricks, and who was the founder of Discovery Channel and Discovery Communications. He started it with his daughter and her husband at the time. Built up a beautiful company over a few years, lots of technology background, lots of content, a really elegant platform. All that was kind of missing at the time were customers and awareness. And so I kind of joined in 2017 to help John bring a little bit of heat, a little publicity to the service. And I was planning to spend a year. A year's turned into 8 years. It's been a glorious run. We've had, no shortage of choppy water like plenty of other media companies. But, if you fast forward to where we are today we have three subscription services: CuriosityStream, Curiosity University, which is a collection of about 1,000 talks and lectures from some of the best professors in North America, as well as subject matter experts. And then through a small tuck-in audio acquisition we did a short time ago. We also today control the world's largest collection, what we believe to be the world's largest collection of Catholic courses content taught by professors from Georgetown, Notre Dame, Catholic University, et cetera. Those are all available in virtually 176 countries. And so, as you mentioned, you have over 20 million paying subscribers on the subscription side. So that is one of our obviously big pillars is subscription, both retail and wholesale. And then, our other pillar is licensing revenue. So we've had a fairly decent traditional content licensing business over the years, licensing to HBO, licensing to Netflix, licensing to, PBS, ZDF, Al Jazeera. Obviously, our content, travels around the world well, and, we have lots of partners there. And then we have a nascent advertising and sponsorship business that largely relies on, third-party platforms and partners. And, on the licensing side, I suspect we'll get into it, but one of the areas that's been really exciting and driving, I think, a lot of interest and, well, not to mention your top line revenue as well, is licensing training rights to AI companies who are building foundational models.
And we will get into that, but let's start first back in that core subscription business, which, really is quite a growth story you got there. What I'm wondering is you have at least one deal with some of the so-called aggregators in the space, Amazon Prime.
Right.
What has it meant for a business like yourself to have the ability to be on those platforms? How big a difference is that in the streaming subscription side?
Yeah, I think one thing that I learned early on, and I didn't realize, if you go back 3, 4, 5 years ago, like for a lot of subscription services, 80 to 90% of their subscribers might be coming from Amazon or from, Amazon and Roku. Like that is not at all uncommon. In our case, we tended to early on sort of build through creator relationships and heavily focused on building out our direct platform. But without a doubt, over the past 12 months, Amazon's been an incredible partner for a variety of reasons. One, they just know how to acquire subscribers probably better than anybody else, in the space right now. Two, we control global rights to most of our content or a sufficient amount of our content, across our subscription services. So as they roll out channel stores around the world, they tend to roll us out. And, obviously, I think we'll see Roku do that as well. But those are increasingly really valuable partners, as are, partners like Xfinity and some of the more traditional guys who also have a sense of essentially channel stores available.
I think it's also, we should note that there's a context here in terms of where Curiosity Stream sits in the marketplace. When people think about subscription streaming, it's typically the biggest services, the Netflix, Disney Pluses of the world. You guys are more in what I would call sort of a specialty
Yeah.
category. And what is that business like? Particularly when the bigger players that I'm talking about, it's not like they're slouches when it comes to
No.
nonfiction content.
Well, it's a great question, and I appreciate you using the term specialty. We like that a lot better than niche. So thank you, Andrew. Yeah, you're right. So if you look at the number of companies who have, call it, over 70 million paying subscribers in the subscription space, like that's a small group of people, right? That's 7, 8 guys, and within that group, certainly, I think Netflix has kind of escape velocity, and Amazon is sort of a different animal, but really think for everybody else, if you want to grow today, like what is clear is that yes, everybody, you can continue to grow. People can grow through pricing, through certainly through spending on consumer marketing, which is always going to be a part of your business as a direct consumer company. But packaging and bundling is the way forward. I mean, it just is. We've always kind of felt that way, and I think what we've tried to do over the last couple of years is sort of re-engineer some packaged and bundled relationships that we entered into early on at Curiosity Stream that were not quite as efficient as they could have been, and work toward developing longer term relationships that include both a fixed component, so that there's some reliable recurring revenue, and then also a significant variable component that might be in the form of AVOD, additional fast channels, those types of things.
Let's talk about that part of your business. What has the fast market in particular been like for Curiosity? It just feels like that business has sort of gone from a bit of a boom to a bit of the bloom coming off the road.
Well, I think that, we were primarily focused on building a subscription business, which I would argue is significantly harder, and the barriers to entry are harder. I mean, if you don't have lots of assets, you're going to just have to spend on consumer marketing or have some other really creative solutions to help grow that. So that's where we spent the majority of our time. I would say that we were, late, certainly, to getting into the fast market, getting into the AVOD market. And the positive for us there is that we control rights to, lots and lots of content that we've not put to work on any of these platforms. I mean, through our sort of AI amassing efforts, I mean, we control rights to well over 1 million hours of content today, as well as video, audio, raw footage, et cetera. So I think that you'll see that business for us kind of grow a little bit more slowly, but it is, it's recurring, it's reliable, it's largely impression based. It's the smallest component of our 3 pillars today, but we have a lot of content to put to work. And I think what you're describing is there's a bit of a culling of the herd, or separating the wheat from the chaff, or there's sort of a re-engineering or reordering going on right now, I think. And so when that happens, that creates opportunities for people who, like ourselves, maybe have not been in it as long as we have. And I think that one thing you'll see from us is we will launch channels that go beyond our flagship service, Curiosity Now. We entered into a nice commercial partnership with Straya Media, second largest U.S. Hispanic media company in the U.S., where we program 3 channels for them: Curiosity Explora, Curiosity Motores, Curiosity Animales. They obviously sell and distribute it, and then together we split the revenue. Like, we like that approach. They're gonna, they'll sell it 5x whatever we could sell it at anyway. So when you split the revenue there, it's something that makes a lot of sense. We'll also, obviously we're well positioned to launch in additional categories, whether it's Curiosity University as a component of our subscription service, or Catholic Stream, or science, or history, or animals, or any broad number of categories. You'll see us, roll out fast channels just, in an appropriate and kind of thoughtful manner.
So you mentioned the content that you have rights to, and I want to focus on rights before we sort of shift the conversation to AI, because I think what people need to understand is how the nature of your rights allow you to do what you're going to describe doing in AI training, and also how that differs in perhaps the average streaming service and the rights that it has.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, uh, it's funny. I came up in the cable business, and I started on what they call the affiliate sales side. So my job in the 90s was to sit in my office in Century City and make travel plans to go all over the Western United States and talk to distributors about carrying the array of services that we had at the time. I moved from that into sort of the new media space, and then managing networks. But I think when you work at a company as large as like a Discovery for that long, or even people there today, you develop sort of very specialized, or you develop everybody sort of has a specialization, and there's not, you don't learn a lot as it relates to like ultra specifics around doing call it a content licensing deal. And so one of the benefits of leaving there after a long time was, I started a film distribution company shortly after I left, and I really didn't know what I was doing. And I can remember going and getting the book of contracts and reading that, and really starting to understand, like, the actual definition of certain rights, and what rights are monetizable and what aren't, and this type of thing. So today, we're a little bit like the Golden Gate Bridge, and the Golden Gate Bridge is always being painted like we're always acquiring and creating content, because we have to feed our subscription services, our pay TV channels, our fast channels, our AVOD channels. So for the AI space, like, it was not super difficult to go to our existing partners to say, hey, we think that there's an opportunity here. Would you be open to, conveying to us the right to license your content as part of our overall corpus? You'll draft off our quality for AI training. And again, we're just granting a training right today. And I think, one of the things that you guys did really well at Variety was you covered all of those text deals that were done at the beginning of last year, which was just this cavalcade of deals, right? It was Reddit, and then it was Condé Nast and Financial Times and The Atlantic and Reuters and AP and News Corp. And like, every day there's something new. I didn't even know what that stuff meant at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But, as I watched that, I did, it did start to dawn on me that, okay, there's got to be a video market here. Like, they can't just continue to just scrape everything from the internet. Having been around, as long as I have, I thought that would emerge. And so, my approach in something like that is like, okay, well, like, what does that mean? And what would that, like, what do we need to know? Like, even just from a legal standpoint, we have a great general counsel in Becky Reed. We've got great, COO, controlling legal authority, in Tia Cudahy, like really good IP lawyers. And so just said to them, like, I think there's something here. And for better or worse, let's just try to do a deal. And so last summer, like, let's try to do just one deal to see like what's required here. Because, when you jump in the pool, you're going to find out pretty quickly whether you can swim. So what we learned, really four things from that, Andrew. We learned one, okay, like, yes, we can clear all the legal hurdles. Second thing that we learned was, annotation, labeling, all that stuff, really important. But what's really interesting for some of these models is using raw video. So I thought, okay, wow, if we can incorporate raw video into this, that's great, because you can't scrape that off the internet. And, we have a lot of that. You create a natural history film, you might shoot 40, 50 hours to do that. And, we know where some of that stuff is. Third thing that we learned was, a lot of these deals will be non-exclusive. So you can license, some of the same content. And then the fourth thing I think that we learned was, okay, it's really interesting. However, if you're going to make any kind of real money in it, you need a lot. You need like super high volume, like, more content than even the studios claim to have. So thought like, okay, in this world that we're in, where we've got a great subscription business, but that's going to grow maybe high single digits. It's not like you're going to double your revenue with a subscription service today, unless you just spend an extraordinary amount of money. So that's, it's great, it's reliable, but if we really want to accelerate growth, we're going to need to amass a lot more content, which be great because, we've got, lots and lots of partners there. But we're going to need to do it in a way that doesn't require us to spend a lot of money. And so on the one side, we kind of went about doing that. And, I mean, just because I've been around so long, I know some guys that have some large libraries, and as as you start to bring a few of those, into the fold, and then as you start to kind of make people money, that just makes the conversations around amassing content much easier going forward. That's a long answer to what you.
No, but I
Yeah.
can't think of a question that
Yeah,
merits a
yeah,
longer answer than
yeah.
that, because it's what you're
But
saying has some profound implications. Because
well,
first of all, I'm not sure, I'm not aware, maybe you tell me, of any other video-based content company like yourself that's even extending themselves into the AI market this
yeah,
way. And that's why I started my question by saying go from the rights,
yeah.
because the whole point is, let me put it this way. Are you guys going to be a canary in the coal mine where plenty of other companies are going to come, or are you actually an exception to the rule because other companies can't do this because of their rights?
Yeah, I think that's a big part. So I think two things. One is it's certainly easier when you're in the nonfiction space and the majority of your content is nonfiction to do this type of thing than, when you're in the world of scripted entertainment and you have lots of talent to deal with and lots of guilds and lots like that is just that's fraught with issues, right? Appropriately so. So there's a fair bit of time that I think it will take to work through a lot of those things. So I think that's one reason why, you don't see, I think, the biggest companies in the world doing that. I think the other part is how meaningful can it be, right? If Warner Brothers Discovery does a 15, $20 million deal, like, okay, that's okay, but it's not really going to move the needle for them. We do that type of deal, like that moves the needle for us. So I think like you have those two issues for sure, come into consideration. The other is, everybody has their core competencies, and when you're, especially today, like as so many companies are, smaller ones especially, are not running with a lot of fat, so you cannot afford to make a lot of mistakes. And some good friends in the media business who I've known for 30 plus years who went to 12 months ago, 16, 18 months ago to say, hey, we're going to try to do this. I think that your content would be, really interesting, especially, incorporated into our broader corpus. Can we do something together? And, number of them told me to pound sand, like, Clint, we think we can do this ourselves. We'll figure it out, and what you find is like, it's really hard, like it's just kind of shoulder to the wheel, a lot of dense work, because as we all know, like there've been a number of fits and starts with the largest AI companies just around, organization and who's, and what it is that they actually need, and then communicating that to the business development people and out to the rest of the world. So all of that stuff takes time, and you have to have the capacity to kind of deal with that. I mean, anytime you get into something new, to state the obvious, like there's there are clouds, there's early chaos and there's uncertainty, but eventually the clouds sort of, clear up and some kind of blue sky presents itself. But one of the things that's been nice to see is that certain people that we went out to and talked to 12, 14, 15 months ago just come back and said, hey, you know what, Clint, this is just, it's too complicated. It's too much work. And it's distracting our people who should be focused over here. So, why don't you incorporate our content into your broader corpus? And then, as you progress and, as deals happens, just, send us our rev share check. So I think and look, we've done that everybody does that in certain areas of their business. And I think that, in our case, it's because we kind of got in, sort of early and have dedicated a core group of people to it. It's starting to pay off. But again, it's just, a big part of it, Andrew, is just just seen so many. I've seen, again, it's just as a function of being old. Like I've watched some of these inflection points. I mean, I wasn't alive when the TV was invented, and I was barely alive in 1967 when you had that first global satellite link that brought together billions of people to watch the Beatles. But I was in the business in the late 90s when, digital compression hit. You had cable systems that went from 40 channels to 500 channels overnight. And you had the launch of, direct broadcast satellite. And then you fast forward to 2005, 2007 with YouTube and Netflix. And in those scenarios, especially the last two, like if you control a lot of content, you did very well, either through licensing that out or, through launching your own services. I mean, that is just that's a fact. And not everybody necessarily, I think, shares my point of view, but the way we look at it is, over this past century, value creation in media just consistently migrates to those who are able to kind of capitalize on paradigm shifting innovation. I mentioned all those, examples, and I do think that we're sort of at the threshold of arguably the most profound disruption and advancement yet. I mean, we see it as it's not an iteration. It's more of a redefinition, and one that will likely bring about a reordering across many, if not all, industries, including media. So, our focus is continuing to control, a lot of IP, whether we own it or we've acquired a certain scope of rights to it, putting that to work on our platforms, and then licensing it out appropriately as well. So we're sticking with the tried and true methods of monetization and media business. And at the end of the day, nonfiction is probably the least sexy part. So we probably have a little less competition here. Most people don't go to Hollywood to create natural history documentaries, but that's okay. But at the end of the day, like unless you're Amazon or maybe, yeah, unless you're Amazon, really, like we're all in the content monetization business. We want to build a beautiful brand, but it's incumbent upon us, and I look at it as a really hard and serious obligation to the people that I work with, shareholders, people who've supported me over the years, to make sure that we're doing all we can to deliver on that.
So how material has AI been for your business? Is this some incremental thing? Is this absolutely a pillar? I mean, it doesn't seem like CuriosityStream is being public about the deals that it has, but I assume you guys are talking and selling to the biggest names.
Yeah. So as you might imagine, that the confidentiality there is really, really, really stringent. However, what we did say at the beginning of the year, just to give some broad guidance, and what we said at the beginning of the year is we thought that our licensing revenue in 2025, driven in large part by AI, could approach half of our subscription revenue, which is public, on an annualized basis. And then we later amended that to say that we believe our licensing revenue will exceed half of our subscription revenue on an annualized basis, which again is public. And then we've since said that we believe we'll do better in 26 than we have in 25. And people will ask, like, okay, well, why are you so confident in that, Clint? Why, and could this be a little bit fleeting? And we're confident. I mean, we're confident sort of in the way that, like, Larry Bird was confident, and we're not comparing us to Larry Bird, but what I loved about being a Celtics fan as a kid, when you could just barely watch a couple of games here and there. They asked him, like, why do you take like, Larry, why do you always take the last shot? So I take the last shot because I was the first guy in the gym, and I'm the last guy to leave, and I've taken more practice shots than anybody else. So kind of like I've done the work. So, some of that is at play here, but we also know that, and again, I'm a couple inches deep on the technology. So, take my point of view as one other media ops guy. That's all I am. But what we do know is that large scale AI models require enormous volumes of video data for training. And as they become more advanced, they need to be fed more. And the scaling laws today will show you that additional video improves accuracy and generative capabilities, even with diminishing marginal returns. So even if an AI company if an AI company is not generating a continuous performance gains, they're losing. And that's, Andrew, why you see these extraordinary salaries they're paying these research scientists, $20-25 million a year. It's just like the stakes are pretty high. And further, like freshness and recency are critical because, cultural trends, products, virtual references, they're constantly evolving. So the models, need ongoing updates to stay relevant and to avoid obsolescence. Also, like we're in the arena, so we're reviewing like real video and audio RFPs. We've got some insight into the quantity requirements now. The quantity requirements next year, their category imperatives, their structural imperatives. And so everyone can do their own research. But, if you look at what all these guys are spending on the CapEx side, a significant portion of that's going to training and a portion of that's going to data licensing and a portion of that's going to, video licensing. So, there's a real market there. And then I would also just kind of tip my hat to my operations partner at CuriosityStream, Mike Smith, who is doing things today that if you told me we would be doing this 9-12 months ago, I wouldn't have even known what it meant. And so kind of what I mean by that is we just today, the first deal that we did, small deal back in last summer, we just sent 1,000 hours of content, and it was just 1,000 60-minute hours with metadata where we had it, and that was about it. But today we're able to clip content at scale. We're able to index it. We're able to label it, to annotate it, and so we can meet all of these very specific needs that come up. And so instead of somebody wanting, call it 25,000 hours of program, they might want 750,000 clips of emerging objects coming in from, one pan right or Zoom or, whatever the case might be. There's like just the requirements get greater and greater, I think as we go. And so if you can't kind of label, annotate at scale, process raw video, color, all of these things that I'd say heretofore have been sort of the province of technology companies, then it's a lot harder proposition for you. And so in our case, like the fact that we can do that today, the fact that we have a volume, the fact that we've just have good relationships and everybody that we've done deals with is we haven't necessarily done it, but everyone's come back and asked for like seconds and thirds and fourths and that type of thing.
So getting back then to my question of like, are you guys a harbinger of what's going to come with the entertainment industry, or there's a rights fundamental difference? As you look further out beyond CuriosityStream to the industry in general, do you see there'll be a broader flight to AI licensing as revenue, assuming the rights deals could be cleared up? And I think you also have to take into account, besides the legal end, Luminate, we ran a survey of consumers earlier this year to gauge their attitudes towards creative works included in AI training data. And clearly, there's some consumer concerns involving consent and compensation. Are these insurmountable, do you think,
Yeah.
or are we heading to a future where what you're doing now that seems so ahead of the curve may be par for the course?
I think it's a great question, and I think that kind of what you're referencing is like, we are deluged every day with like a wide variety of viewpoints around AI, and from seemingly every information source. Like you're a great information source. Like I, like I have every, I think I have every study that you guys have done, saved and, referred to it and all kinds of different meetings.
Thank you.
At the same time, there are a lot of things that people can be, that you can be, I say you, like all of us can be concerned about that don't really matter in the near term or don't really matter for us. I mean, there's big, broader concerns here, I know, but a lot of what's being talked about today, at least as it relates to our business, is noise. And so, to the extent that we can, as a company, just focus on the signal as compared to being distracted by the noise. What I do know is we'll have a good, like this will be a really good business for us. Will it be for others? I think for, the larger studios, it just doesn't necessarily, I don't believe that it makes necessarily a lot of sense because of all the issues that you'd have to work through. And then, is the juice worth the squeeze at the end of the day, or the deal's
Right.
really large enough? And then I think for other companies, again, you just need such volume unless you have some really interesting, specific content. Is it worth, distracting from certain core areas to move into this? We'll see. I do think that that you'll see a lot. You will see, I think, we'll see more sort of bespoke licensing relationships, especially if some of these open source models start to penetrate the market over the next 6 to 12 months. That's a completely separate conversation, but I don't know that it will become something that lots more people embrace. It's pretty dense. It's pretty complicated. It's not sexy, but it is. What I do tell, we share with a lot of our partners is if you have content that's on the open internet, like it's probably been trained on, and so better to have kind of a seat at the table and get some value for that as compared to not.
Absolutely. I bet you that seat will offer an interesting perspective for the next few years at the very least. Clint, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me about Curiosity Stream.
My pleasure, Andrew. Thanks for having me.